David Linden.
Mr Speaker, and as a new member of the House, this is the first time that I've taken part in a private member's bill Friday, and I must say that yes, I will. My honourable friend from Glasgow side is suggesting they take the full 3 hours. I shan't do that, and that is particularly that point. And having sat through the last almost 3 hours of people waffling on for the best part of 50 minutes, I think if we talk about the state that our politics is in, I think that probably highlights that. And yes, indeed, my honourable friend from Glasgow South is right. The right honourable member for Forest of Dean, who spoke for 50 minutes, has left the chamber. So I don't know, perhaps he's away talking to himself in the mirror. But I want to congratulate the honourable gentleman, the member for Manchester Gorton, who has brought forward this bill. It's notable that he has had a fairly meteoric rise as part of the class of 2017. Not only has he been fortunate in the ballot for private member's bill, he's now in the shadow front bench as well. It's almost as meteoric as my rise as the Deputy Assistant Junior Whip of the SNP. But I don't intend to speak for very long, but I do want to say that we in the SNP believe that the UK Government should abandon the plans to cut the number of MPs. Particularly in Scotland, the proposal to cut 10% of Scotland's MPs is absolutely unacceptable. But I want to use a few minutes of my time to talk about the other place along the corridor, the Ermine-Vermin. But I think what we need to be thinking about in this entire debate is not necessarily cutting the cost of politics, but what we're proposing to do, or what the government's proposing to do, is to cut the cost of scrutiny. So I want to use a bit of my time to talk about EU scrutiny as well, and then the infeasibly large seats, and then I want to just round up by referencing some of the things that are contained within the bill as it stands. We are in a rather bizarre position, Mr Speaker. We have a House of Lords with over 800 members. I believe it's second only to China's National People's Congress in terms of size, which is absolutely ridiculous. It is the only legislature other than Iran where clergy are allowed to legislate. We have 24 bishops, temporal and spiritual. Other than Lesotho, it is the only legislature that still has hereditary chieftains. We have 92 hereditary peers, which really does make an absolute mockery of the place. And I think that the thing that's even more scandalous is the fact that they come in, they clock in, get their £300 a day tax-free and then leave. I know my honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh East, is looking at ways that we could try and track how often members of the House of Lords are actually in the building, because there's certainly been evidence before where they turn up and they leave within a few minutes, which is totally unacceptable. We also would end up in the bizarre situation, if this went through, where we would have more members of the House of Peers with a Scottish address than elected members of Parliament for Scotland, which I find absolutely bizarre. But as I say, I think the point with the House of Lords is made by the fact that this government, under the leadership of David Cameron, appointed 126 members of the House of Lords for the Conservatives, 56 for Labour, 51 Lib Dems and 31 independent and crossbench peers. So members on the benches opposite spend a huge amount of time telling us about cutting the cost of politics, but they're quite happy to condone that. Now, I don't see anyone trying to intervene at this stage, so perhaps they understand that is a pretty daft point.
Hear, hear.
I want to... Yeah, I'm more than happy to give way to the honourable gentleman.
Look, as he was seeking an intervention, it is worth noting the fact that actually the cost of the House of Lords has fallen since 2010, not risen. So the cost of politics is being cut in relation to the upper chamber.
Well, the point is, if we continue on the current trajectory of appointing Lords at the rate we're going to have more than 1,000 members of the House of Lords. So I think that kind of falls on its feet there. I want to touch on the issue of EU scrutiny as well, because we are... As we leave the European Union, we are going to be losing 73 members of the European Parliament. That's going to be a lot of EU legislation coming back to London, and I hope the government will resist the temptation to do a power grab and actually put those powers on to Edinburgh and to Wales. But what we're going to see is there'll be fewer MPs to scrutinise that legislation. I remember during the referendum campaign, Leavers telling us that 75% of legislation was made in Brussels. So all that legislation is coming back to this place, where we would be seen to be scrutinising that, yet we're going to have fewer members of Parliament. So I think it does make a mockery of this argument that this is us taking back control, because where's the parliamentary sovereignty there? I think honourable members have already touched on this issue of the payroll vote, but when you combine parliamentary private secretaries and ministers, that's 22% of this legislature. I don't think there's any proposals from the government to reduce the number of PPSs and ministers. I want to discuss the issue briefly of the infeasibly large seats that are proposed under the current boundaries The Right Honourable Gentleman Member for Ross Skye and Lochaber, my group leader, already has 7 islands in his constituency. And bizarrely, Mr Speaker, the new seat of Argyll, Bute and Lochaber would have 30 inhabited islands. I was speaking to my honourable friend, the current member for Argyll and Bute yesterday, who told me that if he turns left from his house and goes towards Glasgow Airport, he would get to Canada quicker than he would get to Canna in the new proposed constituency by going round the constituency. That's an absolutely ludicrous proposal. The new Highland South constituency that's proposed would be the size of Cyprus. I don't know, Mr Speaker, if the parliamentary allowances would allow a new honourable member to have a helicopter to get around that constituency. But again, you've got a constituency that would be 5 times the size of Luxembourg. And I want to quote the former Right Honourable Gentleman who sadly passed away, Charles Kennedy, who said, having represented 3 such vast constituencies over the course of nearly 30 years now, I can say that the current one is by far the most impractical. It has to be said that the other 2 are gigantic and pose particular problems, but there comes a point at which geographical impracticality sets in and nobody can do the job of a local parliamentary representative effectively. So I think Charles Kennedy was a very wise man. I think we should listen to that. I want to, just in the last moment or so, because I don't want to filibuster this bill, I think some people in the other part of the House might have done that. So I just want to finish up by making reference to the provisions within the bill. We certainly welcome the relaxation for the requirement to 7.5% of a quota to preserve local representation. My only mild concern, and I very much hope that the bill will be given a second reading today and we can take it into committee, I'm concerned that the specifics of the bill give provision for a fixed number of MPs for Northern Ireland but not for Scotland. And certainly when the bill does go into committee stage, I'll be seeking to lodge an amendment to that. But I would conclude by saying I very much hope that we do get to a stage where this goes into committee and that members on the benches opposite do not reject this when it comes to second reading, and I commend the Honourable Gentleman for Manchester Gorton.